Yes, Amital, you can start now.
Okay, so my apologies for this elongated discussion, but this kind of topic, it takes time to have some proper discussion and some proper idea about this kind of this kind of concepts, because it's a very wide and very vast topic, very vast thing, which needs time to get into the proper arena, the proper basic idea. So we'll start off from where we just left. Some instances which we are discussing about corporate criminal liability or corporate gross negligence, where we can see the gross negligence from a corporation, deliberate and with knowledge and with intention, where they made some kind of blunders, where they made some kind of nuisance, which resulted in death of so many people. So in this 2013 disclosure, corporations like Ford, IBM, they were involved in this scam where they deliberately manufactured weapons. I'll share you the screen. Just can you please start the screen sharing? The host, please, can you start the screen sharing? Hello?
Yes, you can do it.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, so we're discussing that those instances where the corporation with knowledge and with intention deliberately did some kind of thing or did some kind of activity which resulted in the death of so many people, including Ford, IBM, General Motors, who were openly involved in arm manufacturing units and installed arm manufacturing units in South Africa during this kind of apartheid Holocaust, 1974 and 75 precisely, during that war situation. They manufactured and they distributed weapons and they installed manufacturing of weapon units in South Africa. Boeing 737 MAX crisis. In this crisis, what happened? The Boeing company, they manufactured a new variety of 737, which was already in use, 737, and they came up with a new version of 737, that was 737 MAX. But there was a precisely fault in that 737 MAX engine. And that fault leads to some kind of dangerous activity while the plane is taking off from the base. Just after taking off from the base, the plane or the flight automatically pins down its nose towards the ground. Because of the manufacturing defect or because of the designing defect in that particular engine. There was some designing effect which we can discuss in some later moment. There is no time for precise discussion. The 737 MAX engine, what happened? There's some technical difficulty or some designing defect because of which just after taking off the flight, it automatically pins down towards the ground. To manipulate or to control this kind of situation, they installed some software inside the flight, in the cockpit, for which there needed to be precise and wider discussion, precise and days of days of training required to make the pilot more comfortable for flying 737 MAX engines. But what happened? To increase their marketing strategy, to increase their sale rate, they said it is more easier than the older version. It is more easier to fly than the older version, and you do not need much practice or much training to fly this 737 MAX engine. And they just gave 30 minutes of training before flying this kind of flight, resulting in this kind of minimal training. Resulting, what happened? The flight crew and the flight management system, they couldn't know how to control this kind of crisis situation, and it resulted in the crash of two major airlines. One is Ethiopian Airlines. 737 MAX engine was used in Ethiopian Airlines. It crashed into the ground, killing 180 persons inside the flight. Another crash was into the Pacific Ocean, Lion International flight of Indonesia, killing 200 persons on board. Another instance is Toyota's unintended acceleration fraud. There was some fraud done by the Toyota, and they made some kind of fraud which showed, and they said that the acceleration of the car is completely fine, whereas the Toyota cars are unintendedly more accelerated while it is being actually used. Another example is the Honda airbag malfunctioning blunder. The Honda deliberately did not show any kind of malfunction in their airbags, Whereas the airbag manufacturing company, after years, disclosed this fact that there was some malfunctioning in the airbag and the airbag was not functioning properly inside the Honda cars. Another example, recent example of Volkswagen company, where they use some proxy softwares to falsify the emission test result. Before putting any kind of car or any kind of model into the market, they'll always have some series of tests to see the proximity or the limits of a car. So in this kind of particular test, the emission test results, they use some kind of software which falsifies the test result, and the test result comes finally completely fine. It shows completely fine. The emission test result comes completely fine, whereas it is not actually fine, and it was falsified by some proxy softwares which were used by the Volkswagen company. Now, because of that, it came up into the light, and the Volkswagen company is now jacked, and it is completely gone from the market. Very widely in Indian context, you can see the Bhopal and Vizag poisonous gas leakage, where deliberately they malfunctioned and deliberately they did some kind of blunder. They did some kind of negligence, some gross negligence, which resulted in the death of so many people. So Bhopal gas leak, it was decades ago, 20-25 years ago, and the Vizag gas leak, it happened recently. Now, what is the time difference? What is the time gap you can see between these two incidents? There is a big time gap between these two incidents. Still, the Indian laws is not capable enough to stop these kind of activities in this whole time period, in this whole time from starting from the Bhopal gas leak till the Vizag gas leak. Now we can see in the Indian context, there are some laws or there are some acts which are independently working to stop this kind of actions. Precisely, you can see the section 38. I will just share you what section 38(1) of Narcotic, Drug and Psychotropic Substances says about. The Narcotic, Drug and Psychotropic Substances Act 1985, section 38(1) precisely says about the situation where a crime has been committed by a company, where every person who at the time of the offense was committed was in charge of and was responsible to the company for the conduct of the business of the company, as well as the company shall be deemed to be guilty of offense. Here, the Narcotic, Drugs and Psychotropic Substance Act 38(1) says precisely about the directing minds plus the company itself. Those persons who are in charge for directing such kind of action plus the company itself are liable for any kind of negligent or any kind of criminal activity. What we are looking into now is, sorry, I'll just share the screen. What we are looking into is section 9(1) of Prevention of Corruption Act. Section 9(1) of Prevention of Corruption Act says that where an offense under the act has been committed by a commercial organization, just emphasize on the point that a commercial organization, such organization shall be punishable with fine if any person associated with such commercial organizations gives or promises to give any undue advantage to a public servant intending to obtain or retain business for commercial organizations, or to obtain or retain any advantage in the conduct of business for such commercial organization. It includes any kind of public servant. If you advance or if you try to influence any kind of advantage to any public servant. Public servant means a government servant. Companies Act 2013. There are a lot many sanctions, lot many sections talking about frauds and misconducts for a company by the Companies Act 2013, precisely section 57, 56. You can just look into these sections precisely after we have ended this discussion. So moreover, we'll discuss just one kind of thing or one kind of section in Companies Act, which is more important to discuss, is the 182, section 182, subsection 1. It says about prohibition and restriction regarding political contribution. Just remind about the definition of a corporation, where it allows a corporation to donate or to do some donations or contributions to political parties or to political person. So relating to that circumstance, 182(1) says that notwithstanding with anything contained in any provision of this act, a company other than a government company and a company which has been in existence for less than 3 financial years may contribute any amount directly to or indirectly to any political parties, provided that such contribution shall be made by a company unless a resolution authorizing the making of such contribution is passed at a meeting of board of directors, and such resolution shall, subject to other provisions of this section, be deemed to be justification in law for the making. Now, is this particular sanction or is this particular action being carried out by corporations or company while making any political donations or not? Precisely, we can say I can say personally from my research that not a single company, very less companies are following this sanction of 182(1) Companies Act 2013. Very less company. They are making unauthorized and untraceable donations to any kind of political or any kind of policies made by government. Those kind of transactions, those kind of donations are untraceable in nature. If those transactions has been done under 182 or any kind of 184 of Companies Act, then it could be traceable. But unfortunately and sadly, it is untraceable because they are not following the sanctions properly. Indian Penal Code precisely says sections 23, 25, 171, 490 A, B, C, D, E, and 463. These are definitions of company, their fraudulent actions, and the definition of fraud. Fugitive Economic Offender Act 2018, which came recently, just 2 years ago it came, Fugitive Economic Offender Act. And the first victim of this act was the great Vijay Mallya. The first person who has booked under this act was Vijay Mallya. Now, there is a very vast drawback. There is a very big drawback in this Fugitive Economic Offenders Act. What is the drawback? The drawback is it does not clarify is it the sanction over such person through this act is criminal or civil. The second drawback in this Fugitive Economic Offenders Act is the limit of the fraud or limit of the economy which they have kept is 100 crores. The limit is 100 crores. If anyone doing some fraud including more than 100 crores. Now, how do you expect companies who are less than having 100 crores or was less than 100 crore turnover come under the Economic Offender Act? Company itself who gain less than 100 crores cannot come under this Fugitive Economic Offenders Act, which provides them a shield against this act. Every company is not gaining more than 100 crores. There are some particular companies, those who are gaining more than 100 crores. Now, this is a very major drawback in Fugitive Economic Offenders Act. Other examples are the Negotiable Instrument Act, the Environmental Protection Act, and the Essential Food and Commodities Act. In all these acts, you will find they are pointing in one direction, that the corporation plus its employees both should be criminally held liable for any kind of criminal act. Now, what we see, there are 8 examples. There are other examples which you can always find on internet, but precisely which we are discussing here are 8 examples or 8 different acts which deal relating to any kind of corporate criminality. Now, all 8 acts somehow they intercept each other. Somewhere they overlap each other. Now, what I say, what is my research, what is my perception about this topic, what is my perception about Indian context is there should be one single act which will direct and which will govern these kind of actions or these kind of criminal actions by corporations. All these confusion actions or all these confusion acts somewhere and somehow overlap each other. So there is a need that we come up with a separate sanction, a separate entity or a separate, criminal act, which will only be directed towards the criminal actions or negligence of a company or a corporation. So there are different doctrines or different theories which govern the corporate criminal sanctions. Now, what are those different doctrines? How to decide where a corporation is criminal liable or where it is not criminal liable? So first, we'll discuss about doctrine of identification. The first doctrine which we are going to discuss is doctrine of identification, or you can say the doctrine of alter ego. Now, what is the doctrine of alter ego says? Doctrine of alter ego says that in every action of a corporation, in every kind of thing or any kind of sanction by a corporation, the the laws should be enacted or laws should be formulated in such a manner that it can trace back or it can identify the person behind the corporation who are directing the precise act. For example, there has been a sanction or there has been a marketing strategy deliberately given by a company. Now, these marketing strategies or these marketing gains are decided by the directors of a company or the board of directors of a company. Now, in this situation, the board of directors are the directing mind of a company. So, the board of directors can be said as the alter ego of the corporation. Now, the difficulty we discussed earlier, the difficulty of sacking a corporation as it is not a natural person, as it is not a natural body, how to sack corporation, how to imprison a corporation. So this doctrine of identification, you can imprison a corporation by identifying those person or those persons who are behind an action of a corporation, by identifying the alter ego of a corporation, or precisely the board of directors or higher executive body. When corporation is held criminally liable, the criminal conduct of employees can make them suffer criminally and financially. So the corporate entity is separate entity. Beforehand, what happens, because of some judgment which came earlier that the corporation is a separate entity and persons a separate entity, what these board of directors they used to do, they used to hide behind the excuse of corporate entity. They will put up the charge over the corporation that the criminal liability is of the corporation, not ours. They were hiding behind the corporate entity, the free corporate entity liability. Now, by this doctrine of identification, you can trace down, you can pierce the veil, you can pierce the corporate veil, and you find the particular person, find the exact person who acted upon or who directed this kind of actions. The second doctrine is doctrine of collective blindness or the theory of aggregation. What is theory of aggregation or collective blindness? There are some circumstances where you cannot say that any one single person, whereas in doctrine of identification, we can say or we can point out a single person or the criminal liability of a single person to doctrine of identification. But there are instances where you cannot pin down a single person or single individual for any kind of criminal liability. But at the end, the action of the corporation is resulting in any kind of negligence or any kind of mishap or any kind of criminal activity. Now, in those circumstances, we can use theory of aggregation to calculate the criminal liability of the corporation. What is theory of aggregation? Theory of aggregation says that you can calculate the whole corporation or each and every individual precisely as their own personal or as their own personal benefit when they acted upon their own personal benefit, not amounting to any kind of criminal action personally, where a person inside a corporation acted upon some act not amounting to any kind of criminal action, but yes, aggregatedly, if you take the summation of all the person in the corporation, the action of all the employees in the corporation, it resulted in any kind of mishap or any kind of criminal activity. But personally, if you nab some person, personally, if you pin down some person, the action of the person is not sufficient enough to hold him criminally liable. In that kind of situation, you can aggregate their mistakes, you can aggregate their actions, and finally come down to the action that they have acted on aggregation, they acted on aggregated, and they have acted as if a collective blindness, they have acted as if they are whole blind about the act which is going to happen in result, and you can hold each and everyone who was involved in that action liable. This doctrine gives you an advantage where you do not pin down a person, you cannot pin down a person exactly on his criminal liabilities. When a person cannot be exactly pinned down for his personal liabilities, which is not exactly criminal liability, here in those kind of circumstances, theory of aggregation can be used very fruitfully. Third doctrine is the doctrine of vicarious liability, which is more overly used in US and India. Even doctrine of identification is also used in India. Doctrine of identification is also being used in United Kingdoms. So vicarious liability, what is the vicarious liability? Vicarious liability is the liability of the employer for the actions of its employee. This is the definition of vicarious liability. So to what extent a corporation can be held criminally liable for the actions of its employee? In what circumstances and what situation the corporation can be held liable criminally for its employees' actions? there are certain circumstances where this thing can be concluded, or the criminal liability of corporation through its employees can be concluded. Those things are, if any such person or if any such employee has done this kind of action, if there is a rational relationship or if there is a legitimate relationship between this employee's criminal action and his corporate duty plus with the corporation, then you can conclude that the employee's actions can be corroborated, or the employee's actions can be evaluated as the corporation's liability. Now, the liability arises only when if the employee is acted within the scope of its employment with intention to benefit the company, or acted or acts which concluded in committing a crime. If these two things are included in the employee's action, then you can conclude that the employee's action is the corporation's action, and the corporation can be vicariously held liable for the employee's actions. So for deciding mens rea, how we can pin down our theories? The main element is mens rea in a crime. So how to pin down the mens rea over a corporation? So the dictionary of US says that a person, where a dictionary act of US includes a person, who includes corporation, companies, associations, firms, partnership, society, joint stock companies, as well as individuals in the definition of a person. So a person means all of them, including corporation and companies. So the intent can be provided from specific or general circumstances, or evidence or confession of workers can be clearly demonstrate the act of omission done by the corporation. Whereas the company is not indictable in any circumstances, the company itself cannot be indictable, rather the particular persons can be indictable. This theory applies to those instances where an employee or agent acted on acquired knowledge within the scope of his or her employment, seeking at least in part benefit of the company. That benefit may be in part for the benefit and may be personally. Even there are circumstances or even there are instances where the employee is not acting on behalf of the company or not for the benefit of the company, still his actions are criminally liable in the favor of company. So knowledge, there are two very important aspects, two important elements to the criminal activity of a company. Those two elements are knowledge and intent. How to decide if there was knowledge and intent of the company in that criminal activity or not. So to decide the knowledge and intent, we can discuss about some other theories. There are some upcoming theories. So company always compartmentalize knowledge according to work and specific execution, duties and operations. So aggregation of all those compartments constitute the corporation's knowledge and is held responsible for the employee's failure. So each and every compartment in the company may not necessarily have the knowledge of the other compartment. There may be 5 or 6 compartments in a company. So each and every compartment not necessarily may be knowing the duty or actions of the other compartment, but aggregatedly the knowledge of the whole of the compartment can be attributed as the knowledge of the company, because that compartments or the knowledge to the compartments is being provided to the company or policies of the company. So aggregation of all this knowledge can be concluded as the knowledge of the company. So how to decide if there can be a mens rea or there can be criminal intent for a corporation or not? Yes, there can be a criminal intent for a corporation, because where there is an aggregation of mass capital where there is an aggregation of mass capital or mass money or mass benefit or mass profit, there is a bigger risk of harm if it is used for any criminal purpose. And when there is a mass capital, there is a very precise or very liable chance that it can be used for any kind of criminal purposes. So now, what is a corporate culture and how a corporate culture can be deemed or can be analyzed for the mens rea or criminal intent of a corporations? Corporate culture is precisely a thing which comprises of corporate ethics, its rules relating to behavior inside the company. It is basically the belief and attitude which guides the practice of a company. You can say it is an organizational culture. Every organization, every corporation has a corporate culture. They have a particular set of mechanisms, particular set of rules through which they act upon it. So from this corporate culture, mens rea can be attributed, mens rea can be pulled out. How? mens rea can be established by providing the mens rea of people who run the company. The mens rea of a corporation can be established by establishing the mens rea of the people or the directors of board or the board of directors of the company, providing that the board of directors or board of directors intentionally, knowingly, or recklessly carried out the relevant conduct or expressly or impliedly authorized or permitted the commission of the offense. In this, you can see the third point. The third point says that proving by the mens rea can be proved by proving that a corporate culture existed within the corporation that directed, encouraged, tolerated, or led to non-compliance with relevant laws. There are some corporate culture in every corporation. Now, if you can prove that there has been a malicious corporate culture running within the corporation, then the mens rea of the corporation can be easily calculated. So for this, there has been a new theory which given by Australian law reforms, which is very useful and very, very much useful in attributing the mens rea of a corporation. What is that theory given by Australian government? The theory is organizational liability. Now, according to this theory, corporation's liability arises because of its culture, policies, practices, management, and the thing running widely and rooted inside its culture, which at the end encourages or permits commission of a crime. The companies to be evaluated for criminal liability for its policies and practices, and they can be criminally liable and they can be criminally prosecuted for any kind of culture or any kind of malicious practice or any kind of malicious policies as its corporate culture running inside the company. So there are companies, there are corporations who deliberately or intentionally run this kind of malicious culture inside the corporation and make it their culture. So from this kind of corporate cultures, you can evaluate their mens rea or their malicious intent. So any kind of policies or any kind of standing orders, regulations, and intentional practices of operations are evidence of the corporate aim, intent of, and the knowledge. The corporate, the policies of the corporation, the standing orders, or any kind of management issues, or any kind of practices which is running inside the corporation are evidently the knowledge, or can be said as the intent of a corporation or intention of the corporate aim, or you can say it is the corporate aim or intent or knowledge of a corporation. Hence, from this intent of a corporation can be more easily pulled out by providing or by using this using this particular method, the method of pulling out the mens rea from the corporate culture itself. There is another theory given by the US sentencing guidelines, which says about how to pull out the mens rea or how to limit the mens rea of a company. This theory is preventive fault model. What the preventive fault model says that this model, this model precisely says about the implementation of an effective compliance program by a company it says that the implementation of an effective compliance program not only acts as a mitigating factor to determine the fines assessed to a corporate offender. Mitigating factor means any kind of adding factor or any kind of proven factor or any kind of adding factor. So the compliance mechanism inside a corporation not only asserts or finds the fine which could be given for the corporate offenders or actions resulting from its offenses, but it also represents a strong incentive for monitoring corporate policies. By adopting the preventive fault model, it can be assured that the corporation is not going to do any such kind of thing which will inflict upon them a much more fine which they can afford to pay to the person on whom they are doing some negligence, or the person to whom they are liable to do some to give some compensations. Reactive fault theory, another theory which is related to corporate criminality. Now, what is the reactive fault theory says? The reactive fault theory says about the the action or the reaction of a corporation not before commission of a crime, but after commission of a crime. So this reactive fault theory is very, very useful. Why? Because while doing any kind of crime, the corporation cannot show its malicious intent or cannot show its malicious knowledge to commit such crime. But after commission of such crime, what the corporation is doing, what is the reaction of the corporation. The reactive fault theory focuses not on the commission of an act, but rather on the company's reaction or lack of reaction towards the result of an incident where liability will arise after criminal act has been committed. Here, the liability or the criminal liability is arising after the act has been committed, which is a diversion from the general theory that the criminal liability or the criminal intent is to be evaluated during the commission of the crime. But reactive fault theory makes a diversion and makes the criminal liability after the commission of the crime. It evaluates the criminal liability or criminal intent of the corporation after the act has been committed. So from these all discussion, we saw that the shifting of the judicial attention or shifting of the legal attention from an individual crime to the company's liability has its own benefits. What are the benefits? The benefit shows that it minimizes the risk of scapegoating. What happens while a corporation is, what happens precisely while corporation is criminally liable? They will scapegoat or they will pinpoint one single person and they will put up all the liability over that single person. And it also benefits on less confusion of aggregating a number of gross negligence, while shifting the judicial attention from individual to any kind of person to the shifting of the judicial attention to the shifting the attention to a company's liability. The benefit is you can hold the person who is directing the company plus the corporation itself both liable for its actions, whereas the corporation can be indicted with fines. Similarly, the persons who are running the company, they can be inflicted with some kind of imprisonment. So by this way, imprisonment sanction and the fine sanction both are applicable, can be applied to a corporate criminal liability or to a corporate criminality. So this is all what I have to say about corporate criminal liability, or this is what I have to say about the criminal liability of a corporation. If you have anything you want to ask or any clarification you want, you can just ask me.
Anyone having any question, or we will wind up the session?
There is a very basic difficulty while attributing the criminal liability of a corporation. That difficulty is how to penalize a corporation. Now, to penalize a corporation is not obviously a natural body. It is an unnatural body. It is an artificial body. Now, a corporation cannot be jailed. It cannot be put behind bars. So, where the sanction mandates for a fine plus the imprisonment. In such situation, what is to be done? So by using these theories, which we just discussed, by using those theories, the corporation can be criminally liable where there is a mandate of fine plus imprisonment. Now the fine can be inflicted on the corporation as a whole. The imprisonment part can be inflicted on the person who are directing the company or who are helping the company in executing this kind of criminal activities. So while executing this kind of criminal activity, you have to pin down those persons, a group of persons who are actually responsible for the action, not the whole group of employees or not the whole company. By this way, we solve the issue of fine and imprisonment both at a time. So if you have any questions relating to corporate criminality or corporate criminal liability, you can just ask me. This is a very burning topic right now, corporate criminal liability. Just 2 days ago, the Russian president started a state of emergency because what we discussed in the last part of the slide, the reactive fault theory. Because of the reactive fault theory, what we discussed, that how the corporation is reacting after it has committed some crime or after it has committed some blunder. What happened in Russia after this cobalt company or this nickel company? I'm forgetting the name. Just a minute. I can't just. I don't remember exactly the name of the company. Sorry for that. It's a very leading nickel company, leading nickel manufacturing company in Russia. Because of their gross negligence, billion and gallons of oil has been spilled into the ocean, the Arctic Circle, and after that they did not try to stop it. They did not try to intimate the government. They did not try to do anything to stop the catch. After 2 days, the government goes to know it by themselves, and after that, they found they have not acted upon the gross negligence properly. They have not done anything to stop it, and for that reason, they have implemented a state of emergency in Russia. This is what reactive fault theory especially says about, which we are now using in present days. So thank you all for listening to me. Thank you all for giving your time. This was a very big and wide topic. Thank you for your patience and thank you for your valuable time. If you want any kind of other discussion relating to corporate criminality, you can mail me or you can contact me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Amitabh, for enlightening us.